And here, this is the Sahel. Now, look how interesting that is. Mali, Niger, both had the coups. Burkina Faso had the coup. That's just right there, right south of Timbuktu. So you just have to wonder along here, Chad going to be next? Liberia? Because the Liberian president going out saying, hey, institutional coups, you know, we got to kick these unelected, stolen election, purveyors, fake presidents or fake whatever they are and it holds positions of office out. Kick central banking out and establish their own currencies outside of central banking. Now, you start talking those words and that's rough. The whole world's militaries are coming against you unless it's the entire continent and then they're not. So they understand right now they all have to rise in unison at the exact same time to stop the same entrenched militaries and banking powers from coming back in. And welcome back. David Dubai and Brighteon TV, uncensored every other Friday, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Taking a look at a wider picture, well, we're at the inflection point of our civilization. You can see it, you can feel it, there's no way around it. So what happens next is sort of the question. A lot of conversations I'm having with people is, okay, it's very obvious now we are at a complete juncture and change in everything we've ever known. All of us, whatever age you are, the things that you knew up to this point, that's the end. That is now considered the past. So how do we move forward here and what are some of the disruptions that we could expect? There's going to be 3 that I can see directly in front of us right now beginning to manifest. They're going to have an explanation or explain away crop losses in the southern hemisphere because of the ozone expansion event anomaly and their record snows that are going to be experienced across the northern hemisphere due to all the extra water vapor in the atmosphere. These extremes are going to go 180 degree against the hottest year ever type of thing. So they're going to backbend you and try to get you to believe something completely opposite from what your eyes are seeing. So when you see double or triple record rain or snowfall, coming in the winter here, and then they're telling you to believe that it's snow's melting and the ice is melting, and you're going to get this, whoa, I don't understand that. We just had the strongest blizzard ever recorded, and it's supposed to be the warmest year ever kind of. You're going to watch them backpedal and narrative shift like every single minute. So we've gone off of we're coming into the global boiling month. As I said, every month we move into, it's going to be a new narrative, which will be rinsed and repeated as we move through the rest of the history as we know it. So I'm going to start you off with we're going to focus heavily on Africa today, because this is where, a predominant amount of the shift is occurring. And once you put this into perspective, you're going to shake your head and say, oh yeah, okay, I could see it too. So where is the food and where are the minerals going to come from? Is the question. We look at these giant mining operations. This is in Australia here, but it only goes so large for so long, and then you have to look at other producing nations like Africa, for example. Now, I've been just always following anything BRICS related news that would come out. So before it was going to be termed a gold-backed currency between trading partners in this new BRICS alliance. I digress. You know what? New information says it's going to be a gold-backed token that will be interswappable for sovereign debt, which means country to country can settle their debt. It can be a corporation to a country, a corporation to a corporation, and somewhere down at the bottom, people will also be able to hold these tokens that are backed by gold. Individual citizens that reside that can show passport and KYC of a nation involved in BRICS. Like what us as Americans, we very well might not have access to those tokens. Jerome Powell and the Fed raised rates for the 11th time in July. The Hill warned it's a mistake that could spark a recession. Economists believe this is the last rate hike in the most aggressive rate hike cycle in history. Rate hikes are typically headwinds for gold. Meanwhile, gold has gone up over 20% since 2022. Imagine where gold and silver are going to go when the Fed stops raising and starts cutting. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group has the No Fee for Life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call,
546-7020. And now on with the video.
Because we're not in the BRICS aligned nation, and with KYC, they'll go, you're an American, you can't buy it. Too bad. Get back over there. So huge announcements are coming here on the 15th. When the meetings start for the BRICS, they're going to have formal announcements of some sort of currency. And see, this is the wrong word to think about, currency. It can be manipulated. And the whole working groups for this meeting now is to set in motion a non-crashable, non-manipulatable unit of exchange between. Now, if you say gold-backed currency, that can definitely be manipulated if there's some sort of fiat price or some sort of pricing on a world market for that. And all these G7 mighty powerhouses can jump in and manipulate that currency. So they've chosen wisely to go to the token aspect of it. It will not be a globally traded currency, which just knocked the wind out of all those planning to try to topple the currency day one by coming together. So here's the at least nations that they have for the announcements coming up on this next meeting in the 15th. It begins 15th and it rolls through the whole week, I think until the 22nd or 21st. It'll be a whole week event. I'll read them with you. These are, when you look at the resources involved with this, these are the new members that will be inaugurated and welcomed in with handshakes. United Arab Emirates, that's the UAE, Saudi Arabia. So this one, like you really look at it, the petrodollar has finished. So somehow we're going to have to nationalize and monetize all that debt. Those others are not going to want to buy with our treasury bills. This Weimar Republic is where we're going with this. Now, is it going to be instantly Weimar? No. But as they put these treasury bill auctions up and just nobody's going to be buying our treasury bills, our own government will buy them back. But then they're going to monetize that, meaning just inflate it, print the money, and you and me out here are going to get hit with inflation, and it's going to devalue our purchasing power. It's not anywhere near 2 to 3%. It's probably around 7%, 8% per year of your devaluing dollars. That's going to clip exponentially, 20, 30, 50% per year. We're going to start losing. Once this gets in play, the petrodollar's only a second option. Now we got Bangladesh, Venezuela, another oil producer is going to be joining. Argentina, major grain producer. Indonesia, another major oil producer in OPEC as well. Ethiopia, Bahrain, which is interesting because that's a huge transit area and American military is right over there, putting bases all through Bahrain and UAE. We got Mexico, and I'll bring Mexico up again because they're having a tooth and nail fight against genetically modified crops right now. See, Mexico wants to do health studies on GMO crops, and America's like, nope, we're going to trade embargo you on grains if you do a study on GM destructiveness to the gut health of cows and humans both. And I thought that's an interesting one. We'll talk about that today. Nigeria, which has been in the news quite some time. This is all oil. Algeria oil, Egypt, and Iran. These powerhouses of oil production and resources, they're all going to BRICS, and they are abandoning the dollar, and they're going to start transacting and purchasing bonds that and other natural resources, values of mining, etc., operations that will be brought up. They're going to issue bonds against those that will bring raw materials to market, to fabrication, to end product in these underdeveloped nations right now. Africa's taken it all back. And how they're going to monetize that is the same way we do. They're going to issue bonds against everything, but the BRICS, they're going to buy their own bonds from their own issuance from those nations. And the US dollar, US Treasury is not going to be a wanted instrument anymore. Okay, it'll come back home, but we're going to have to monetize that, meaning just print more money out of thin air. And that means every single cent you spend is going to be devalued. And, you know, during this, you might go, oh, okay, well, big deal, big whoop with the BRICS. No, not a big whoop, a gigantic whoop, because the USA got downgraded from a AAA rated credit nation down to AA+. And people were saying that just, I can't believe you would do that. That's just so knee-jerk reaction. That is going to send global markets into a tailspin here. So originally, until just last week, these are the other nations off the list here. The only AAA rated nations. And you go down, these are some powerhouse nations, all developed countries: Australia, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Singapore, Sweden. And who's down there? Switzerland. Okay. You see these lists and you go, yep, stable money. So we have been downgraded into this list. Now, this is no joke either, but Austria, Finland, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Taiwan, and America. That's the group we've been downgraded into globally. This is definitely going to have some repercussions as we, move down the timelines of issuing or holding treasury auctions when there's going to be other alternatives for all these countries to park their money in a new resource and gold-backed tokenization. And this is another thing you're going to start hearing about, tokenization. This is blockchain. Okay, good. LA Token, way back in like 2017, if memory correct, started to tokenize oil and art. So you could have a $2 million piece of art, and what they would do is they would tokenize the full value of it and then break it off into each token was worth $100 of that or $1,000 of that piece of art. Now, you didn't have to buy the full 2 million yourself. What they did was get a liquidity pool of buyers to equal that 2 million total, and they split out, and the tokens went out to everybody who had part ownership of it. This is the same thing that they're going to do with real estate. Every commodity, gold, silver, and tokenization is the way to go. So any projects, especially focused on mining, freshwater, agriculture in these developing nations for BRICS, are going to start tokenizing every single aspect of their monetary base. Once it has a value associated with that contract, then it can be split, sold, invested into, sold, bond, whatever you want to do, put it into the banking system as some sort of debt. What is it, not unknown at that point. But look at the United States. They even have the forecast is negative. All the other nations, stable, stable, stable. We go up here, stable, stable, stable. All the AAA rated nations, stable, stable, stable. They're looking for further downgrades for the United States, if that's even possible, to get knocked off this list to AA. That's Republic of Georgia. If we go down to AA, I mean, the credit worthiness of our country is in jeopardy here. So the African nations in unison seem to have an uprising going on because they know they have the backing of China and Russia. So everything that you knew that came from Africa is now going to come under new contractual agreements from the Africans themselves, saying you have colonialized here, you have imperialized our nations here for 300 plus years, you've stolen, murdered, razed to the ground, installed puppet governments, and it's over for you. Stops right here, right today. So I saw this today. I was like, Burkina Faso, also another coup right there. And what's so interesting, these guys are so well spoken too when they're explaining, especially Niger. It's like, I want to ask you a simple question. With Africa having the most resources on the planet, abundant rainfall, abundant soils, volcanic soils, why is it that we still have to beg for food from the Food and Agriculture Organization from the United Nations? Why are we, with some of the best crop growing zones on the planet, begging for food? I want to ask you that question. And they go through, everybody is in unison in Africa, and I wish you would listen to them. Now those in power coming in the coup or seizure of power are eliminating and removing all of the Western puppet, stolen election, inserted government officials. So as we look here, Mali, another coup, right next to Niger, Guinea, Burkina Faso. Who's next? Niger, who's next? So 4 of these, and I thought that's pretty interesting. Right in the Sahel region, which I keep talking about, where would be a second food growing area on the planet. If the resources were utilized wisely, they could set it up as another food growing area on the planet and consolidate that, and who controlled that would control a vast majority of the world's food supply. And George is way, and he's the president of Liberia, which I would say maybe who's next, maybe Liberia. Because as long as ECOWAS, that's a consolidation of countries in Western Africa that have their own trading bloc, economic bloc that come together, tolerates institutional coups. And that's what I'm talking about. Stolen elections, inserted officials. Backhanded civil wars started to insert those officials who did not go along with the Western dogma. of just keeping mineral. You give us the raw minerals, you give us the raw gold. That's all you get, and we'll keep you in power, and you can, you know, have your luxury life while everybody else is living on less than $1 a day in your country. That's institutional coups that allow a lifetime of presidencies and fraudulent declaration of election results, manipulation of judicial announcements. Now he's saying there's a military coup. Now you can't condemn the military coup without condemning also at the same time the institutional coup, which we see. It's plain as day, these institutional coups that have taken across the world, taken over. The insertion without election, the nullifying of results, the stuffing of ballot boxes, the murdering in Africa and Asia too, of those who were going to win elections were murdered before they could, stand in the election. They were arrested, just like we're seeing now. Political opponents arrested that were going to win. And this is an institutional coup is the best way to describe what we're seeing, or how is pretty much the base operation of political systems across the planet. If it's not communism, it's institutional coup, which has occurred. Now you can look at these dark forces and dark powers that have taken over the planet. World Economic Forum with their leaders, that's an institutional coup right in front of you. I mean, they're calling it for what it is, and they're not having it anymore. This is definitely a huge, huge change for the world here, because Africans are going to take and regain control of all their natural resources. That's it. And when you look at the vast amount of rare earth minerals coming out, cell phones, computers, electric cars, batteries, anything that you consider that runs our planet right now in the modern age, a huge amount of that comes from Africa. And I found this so interesting here. The country, France, actually was in control. They used the Central African franc there. Now, France still had a huge fingerprint and footprint. Even though they had left, they were still, in control of a lot of these nations in Africa, West Africa. And that's so interesting that France have 0 gold mines, 2,436 tons of gold in their reserves. But a place like Mali, 860 gold mines, not a nickel in their reserves. This is going to reverse itself. Get ready for this change. I cannot really, the grasp of this, of just, wow, it's all happening at lightning speed so fast that as at the next country, the next country, the next country, it would not surprise me if foreign national companies were just kicked out of these areas that are not going to be part of the BRICS nations, the BRICS trading currency. Now, Niger had uranium and also gold. And that was the big thing that everybody's talking about, uranium and gold, uranium and gold. Okay, I get it. They're trying to get you to look that way. What also was on the table here was this trans-Saharan pipeline, which is now going to come under control of the Africans, not under the West, quote unquote, down there. That's why Nigeria is so heavily contested. They needed that loading port down there. And look at that big old red line running right through Niger, Nigeria, Algeria. Without Niger, it doesn't happen. And the same thing with the pipelines without Syria coming on board. Those pipelines weren't happening across the Middle East transit routes either to bypass Iran. See, there's always one nation that, and you see that gameplay again and again, whether it was Gaddafi going to go to the gold reserves, gold-backed dinar. We saw the same thing with Iraq, with Saddam Hussein was going to accept gold for payment in oil. We saw Libya go down, which I have some slides here on the Nubian sandstone aquifer, but also with Syria. So it is about the transit routes here. It's far more than just about uranium and oil. It's about natural gas and access to water. Now look how much gas was going to go, 30 billion cubic meters of gas. And apparently they had put more than 1 billion euro into this trans-Saharan gas pipeline. Russia's going to control that now, of all things. Can you believe it? China and Russia are going to divvy that one up. So the West obviously is going to come back in and try to counter coup. But, the pendulum swung so far over that Russia and China have inserted themselves in there. And I really doubt that the Americans will be able to get better. Collective West is a better term. to get their militaries in to reestablish another coup, because it's broken wide open. I mean, the illusion has been shattered. Humpty Dumpty fell off like a 50-floor building, just didn't fall off the bridge. Shattered, not coming back. It's all wide open now. So almost every person in Africa is very aware of what's going on and why it's happening in unison across. Now there's a solidarity movement across all of Africa. Kick out these Western companies, keep our resources in our own borders, and make ourselves, have at least some lifestyle where they don't have to beg for food, and people aren't dying from malaria all over the place. And simple medicines that we can get that save our lives that are unavailable for the average person across Africa. It's just, you look at how this place has been purposely put on the shelf for a later rainy day. That time is over. Access to these resources is gone for the West. It's opening up for the BRICS. And here, this is the Sahel. Now, look how interesting that is. Mali, Niger, both had the coups. Burkina Faso had the coup. That's just right there, right south of Timbuktu. So you just have to wonder along here, Chad going to be next? Liberia? Because the Liberian president going out saying, hey, institutional coups, we got to kick these unelected, stolen election, purveyors, fake presidents or fake whatever they are and it holds positions of office out. Kick central banking out and establish their own currencies outside of central banking. Now, you start talking those words and that's rough. The whole world's militaries are coming against you, unless it's the entire continent and then they're not. So they understand right now they all have to rise in unison at the exact same time to stop the same entrenched militaries and banking powers from coming back in. This is going to be something to behold. It's already just sparked. But a little spark in a bamboo forest full of gasoline, it's that initial spark, the first few things ignite and then whoosh, it goes. And they're going to abandon in unison anything West, anything central bank. In Niger, when they had the coup, they actually held the central bank president and said, you have to return all the money or we're going to execute you by firing squad in 48 hours. Well, he was able to come up with some money, and the story is unknown what has happened to him since. But they singled out the very people they should have. And they were pulling them out and saying, you know what, you were the problem. You're the central bank. Head here. That's why our country's so poor. And you're giving away all the resources. So we're taking our resources back. We'll talk about this when we come back. And it's not just, here's Timbuktu for you. Some of these stories from the Ghana kingdom that used to rule that area traded gold as well, salt and gold, all the way from, if we look over here to the Red Sea, all the way over to the Atlantic, both bodies of water going right through that, from Port Sudan over to Nouakchott in Mauritania. That was the Ghana kingdom. Well established, been around, was the most apparently wealthy, and the sciences and architecture they had. So we'll talk more about this when we come back from the break. Hope you can join me. What's under the sand is the most important, the water.